Hi everyone, this is BK from CocoZini. Today's tutorial is on this beautiful dress. It's a very free dress and I added a lot of ease to it. You know, we women, we yo-yo many times with our weight. So this is a dress that you can wear at any stage of your weight. Um, it's a freehand sewing dress. So you're going to use your own measurement for this dress. Before we get into this tutorial, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and also hit the notification button to get updates from me when I have a new video. And if you're a returning subscriber, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Also, if you make any of my tutorials, I would love to see how it looks on you. So don't forget to tag me so I can see what it looks like. Well, let's get started. Here are the measurements that you will need. You're going to need your measurement, your bust measurement divided by 4, your waist measurement divided by 4, your hip measurement divided by 4, your bicep measurement divided by 2, and your shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2. I'm using an African print Ankara cotton fabric, and my fabric is a little bit short of 2 yards, but I'm going to try as much as possible to make it work for this tutorial. I have folded it into 4, which means 2 for the front bodies and 2 for the back. So it's unfold. Okay, so what I did next is that I draw a line to start on top right there. So that's going to be my shoulder line. And I have this fabric unfold, just so you know. So I have 2 fabrics lying on top of each other, one for the front and one for the back. It's unfold. So I'm going to measure from my shoulder line to my waist. Mine is 17 inches. I don't know what yours is, so you might want to use the measurement that you have. So mine is 17 inches. I'm going to go ahead and square that measurement out right there. Then I'm going to go ahead and also measure the measurement of my shoulder to hip. Mine is 24. So go ahead and square out that mark there. 17 is a kind of like an average for a normal average measurement from shoulder to waist, and 24 is almost an average measurement from shoulder to hips. But make sure you measure yours and use the measurement that you get for this. I'm a size 10, sometimes 12, 10, depending on the day of the month. I could be a 10 or 12. So I'm also going to go ahead and measure how long I want that dress to be. My dress is a 34 inches long, or 35 actually. My dress is 35 inches long, but I'm going to add 1.5 inches seam allowance for the hem. So now we're going to have 36.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and square that length also. Okay, so we have all those measurements measured out like that. So what we're going to continue to do is that you're going to get the measurement of your waist. On the waistline, you're going to use the measurement of your waist. Mine is 35 divided by 4. I have 8.75. So I'm going to mark it right there. Then I'm going to add 1 inch allowance, just so it can be a little free. I don't want it to be tight. So I'm going to add 1 inch allowance. Then I'm also going to add 1 inch seam allowance. So 1 inch is and 1 inch seam allowance on the waistline. So I'm going to go to the hip line. So on the hip line, use your hip measurement divided by 4. My hip is 43. Divided by 4, I have 10.75. So I'm just going to mark it right there. Then I'm going to add 1 inch ease. Then I'm also going to add 1 inch seam allowance, like so. I'm going to connect that line, the last line, which is the seam allowance line, to the hem line, like that. Okay, then now we're going to go up back to our shoulder line. So you're going to take the measurement of your shoulder to shoulder divided by 2. Mine is 15 divided by 2 will give me 7.5. And also I want my sleeve to be 8 inches long. So I'm going to mark 8 inches from my shoulder mark. And the remaining half there is going to be the seam allowance. So let's go ahead and mark our neck. So I'm going to mark 3 inches wide and 3 inches deep, right at the folded corner of the fabric. And I'm marking this on the shoulder line. So I'm just going to go ahead and square it out with the ruler, and I will carve out the neck there. Like so. For the ease of wearing, because I'm not using a zipper at the back, so for the ease of wearing, I'm going to make this neck a boat neck. So you're going to measure out from the 3 inches of the neck to your shoulder mark. So whatever you have there, you're going to divide it by 2, and you're just going to mark it in the middle. So go ahead and join it. Use your curve ruler to join it to the depth of the neck. So this is going to be your new neck measurement. Okay, like that. So that's the boat neck. Well, then what we're going to do next is that we are going to measure 2 inches from the sleeve right there, and we'll mark it, and that is going to be our shoulder slope. Then we're going to connect that 2 inches to that boat neck line right there. Okay, so get your ruler, connect that 2 inches, and draw a line from the sleeve all the way to the neckline. Then we're going to move to the sleeve. So whatever measurement you have from your bicep, divided by 2. Mine is 15. I'm dividing it by 2, which is 7.5. Okay, so that measurement, we're going to use it right there, starting from that slope that we have. So mine is 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, but I'm just going to round it up to 8. Then I'm going to add 1 inch ease. Then I'm going to add another 1 inch seam allowance, making 10. So I'll mark it right there. So that's 10 inches. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to square out this mark. I'm going to make a line from the folded part of my fabric, like so. So that's the line. So this line is going to be our bust line. So whatever measurement you have from your bust, measure it. Mine is 40 divided by 4 is 10. So I'm going to add 1 inch ease, and I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance. And I've marked them out on there. We're going to start connecting all those marks together. So get your curve ruler. You're going to join your main measurement from your waist to your hip, like that. Then you're going to join your ease and connect the two together from your waist to your hip. Then you're going to join the seam allowance from your waist to your hip, like so. So we're going to do the same thing from the waist to the bust. When you're done, now we're going to go onto the bust line, and what we're going to do is we're going to measure 1 inch on that bust line. Okay, just mark it down. Then we will connect that 1 inch into the shoulder line. So go ahead and connect the line like that. So in that corner, we're going to mark 1 inch. The corner of the bust and the side seam, we're going to mark 1 inch. So that's my 1 inch mark. Then also on the side seam, we're going to mark 2 inches down from the bust line. So go ahead and mark it. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to connect from the bust line below the sleeve, then connect it through the 1 inch that I mark, then join it to the side seam, the 2 inches side seam. So that would just be your sleeves. So now let's start cutting. So you can cut this one at a time. So what I did is I took out the back bodies and I'm just cutting the front first. Okay, so now we're going to cut the neck. So here it is. I'm cutting out the boat neck, not the first one that we did, but the second one, which is the boat neck. Then before we cut into shoulder, we have to add our seam allowance. Go ahead and rule out your ½ inch seam allowance. I should have done that earlier, but that's okay. So now you can go ahead and cut. There you go. So now I've placed my front bodies on my back bodies, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the whole thing out. Just the same way I cut the front, because both the front and the back are the same thing. We don't have any difference. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it all out. There you go. So now we have two bodies, one for the front and one for the back. So here I'm going to cut out the facing. So I've already folded out the facing. I have that on fold right there. So what I'm going to do is that, so I'm going to place that bodice on top of the facing. Right side facing each other, unfold. So we're placing it right there. Make sure it's all well aligned. Then we're just going to cut out the neck. Like that. Okay, then remove the bodice from the facing. Then you're going to measure out 3 inches. Then mark it. Then I'm also going to measure out 3 inches from the shoulder, like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep making the lines, the 3 inches line all around, starting from the neckline. So it's going to be easy for me to just cut out when I want to cut it. So I'm just marking it like that. Then I'm going to start from the top. Then I'm going to do the same thing. So when I'm done with this, I'm just going to cut it out. There you go. So that's going to be our facing. So you're going to cut 2 of the facing. Let's start sewing. If you're not adding pockets, you can omit this part. So I have my bodice right side facing up. I have cut out 4 pockets. I have a pattern for the pockets, and I'm going to leave a link below. You can print it out and use it to cut your pockets. I'm going to add the right side of the pocket to the right side of the bodice, okay? And you can figure out where you want your pocket to be. Maybe you want it higher or lower. Just pin it to the bodice, right side facing each other. Then you're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Remember, you'll be joining 4 pockets. So stitch it with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you join the pocket to the front and the back. I'm done joining the pocket, and I have also gone ahead to iron it flat, facing out like this, right side. I have the 4 pockets all joined together. So grab your bodice and align it together. Make sure the right side are facing each other. And sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so you're going to also grab your facing. Make sure the 2 facing, so you align it properly. Then you're going to make sure the right side are facing each other. Then you're going to go ahead to the machine and sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I am done joining the shoulders. I've also finished the edges. Here is what it looks like. Okay, so I'll also join the facing, and here is what it looks like. I've ironed it flat, and I have also finished the edges of the facing. So this is the wrong side. We're going to turn it to the right side. Turn the body to the right side. We're going to grab our facing. Then we're going to join the facing to the body's neck with right side facing each other. Like that. Make sure you align the seam to each other, the seam of the facing to the seam of the bodice. Pin it together. And do the same to the other side of the shoulder seam and pin them together. You're now going to take it to the machine, sew it around the neck with 1/2 inch seam allowance. On the sleeve, if you're adding a flap like I'm doing here, you're going to measure the sleeve, how long the sleeve is from there to there. That is going to be the length of the flap. Okay, then you're going to cut that measurement out with 3 inches wide. So you're going to fold it together with right side out. So to attach it to the sleeve, you're just going to fold the flap into 2 Then align the middle to the shoulder line right there. Then make sure the raw edge of the flap is aligned to the raw edge of the bodice, of the sleeve. Then you're going to sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. But if you're not adding the flap, here is just what you can do. So you're just going to turn it in, the sleeve in, like 1/2 inch, like that. Then you're going to turn it one more time, like that. Then you're just going to sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. And that's it if you're not adding the flap to it. I have done joining the facing. So I've turned it in from the right side to the left side right now. And that is what it looks like. When I turn it in, I have ironed it flat. So I have joined the seam to each other. And here is what I did. I also went ahead and I notch it all around. Then after I notch it, I also top stitch. I make sure the stitch is facing the facing. I top stitch on the facing. So when you're done, you're just going to hem it all around. So that's the facing and the neck. On the sleeve, I have joined the sleeve flap to the wrong side with raw edges facing each other on the wrong side of the fabric. So when I got done sewing it with 1/2 inch seam allowance, I make sure I ironed it out like that. This is still the wrong side of a fabric. Then I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the excess of the flap like that. Okay, so you're now going to turn it to the right side like that. Then you fold the flap back in right like that. So you'll use your iron to iron it down. So that is it. So when you're done doing this to the two sides, we are all going to join the side seam. So with right side facing each other, with the right side of the fabric of the bodies on top of each other, we are going to join the side seam. So I have aligned the bodies together. So we're going to stitch the side seam with 1 inch seam allowance. So we're going to go all the way down. So when you get to the pocket, for those of you adding pocket, so you're going to stitch up to like 1 inch of the pocket. Then you go in, pivot and go into the pocket. Sew it all the way around with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then you get to like 1 inch out of the pocket right there. Then you pivot and go all the way 1 inch into the side seam, then all the way down. Just do the same thing to the other side. I'm done stitching the side seam with 1 inch seam allowance all the way down and 1/2 inch by the pocket. So what I'm going to do is right on the armpit area, I'm just going to notch it to allow for free movement. Okay, so I'm going to do that to the other side too. I'm already done joining the seam and I'm going to just go ahead and notch it to allow for easy movement. Be careful when you're notching so you're not cutting into the seam. Now I'm doing the hem. So at the hem, I'm going to first fold it into 1/2 inch. So you can use your iron to kind of iron it all the way around. Then you're going to fold it into 1 inch like that. So you're going to sew it with 1 inch seam all the way around. I'm done sewing it. This is what it looks like, and this is what the bodies look like. And this is what the dress looked like. So one thing that we're going to do finally is that you see the flap, to secure it from opening up, I stitch it on the shoulder seam. So I just did like half an inch on the shoulder seam, and I did the same thing with the facing. I just kind of sew it into the shoulder seam. I tack it into the shoulder seam so it won't be moving around. So that is the end of the tutorial. If you have any question on this video, please leave a comment down below. I'll try as much as possible to respond to your comments. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back to the channel. Let me know what you think about the dress. It's a very simple dress, and you can easily just wear it anywhere. As you can see, I'm wearing it here. Until the next time, thanks for stopping by and stay blessed.